Purposes of this panel, as we know, is to set the tone for the day, to set a tone that is learner-centric, inclusive of student voices, forward-thinking, and action-oriented. And so I'm going to now allow the students to introduce yourselves, share what institution you're coming from, what you're studying there, and go right on ahead. We'll start with you, Julia.
My name is Julia Burnham. I am a fourth-year student at the University of British Columbia, and I study First Nations and Indigenous Studies.
I'm Natalie Miller. I know we just introduced ourselves, but I'll do it again. Okay. I'm a senior at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I'm actually a transfer student, though. I got associates in computer science, mathematics, and physics at College of the Canyons in California. And now I'm working on a computer science degree with an entrepreneur minor at Cal Poly. I'm the first open ed student global nominee, or global award winner. I'm sorry. It's hard to describe.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sullivan. I'm a PhD student in sociology at the University at Albany, and I'm also a graduate assistant with Open SUNY.
Hi, I'm Roshni Pence, a fourth-year international economics student at the University of British Columbia, and also working on academic advocacy with our student government.
Hi, I'm Melanie Maricua. I'm a fourth year studying philosophy and economics at UC Berkeley, and I am also the academic affairs vice president.
Hey guys, my name is Jonah Tashjian. I'm a sophomore at St. Edward's University, and I like computers a lot.
Hi, I'm Jacob Freeland from San Diego State University, and I'm studying music composition, but with a focus on video game development.
Hi, my name is Lauren Suna. For some reason, I have two microphones right now. I am a third year studying emerging media at Ithaca College, where I'm also the immersive technology specialist within our IT department.
My name is Lou Lawrence. I am a fourth year PhD student at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and I study the design process and design thinking in educational technologies.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I'm from University of British Columbia as well, and I'm studying cognitive systems with a focus in user experience.
Hi, again. I'm Diana Chen. I'm currently in my fourth year studying computer science with a certificate in cross-sector collaboration, and I'm also a part of the NAE Grand Challenge Scholars Program.
So in true Shaping EDU format, we're going to approach things from a dreaming, doing, and driving standpoint. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask the students their dreams for the future of education. And Roshni, I'll start with you.
I guess one of my dreams would be that no student feels as though they're unprepared for whatever they want to do. I think universities do, well, I mean, this is maybe a generalization, but a lot of universities do a really great job of preparing students to think critically, but that doesn't translate into actual skills. It surprises me and concerns me a little bit that so many of my peers feel so unprepared to go into the workforce when they've spent years studying something. So my dream would be that students actually feel ready to take on whatever challenges they have in the workplace, along with being able to think critically and have sort of more academic models in their head.
Excellent. Natalie, what's your dream?
Ooh, my dream, open ed. Honestly, my dream is to see just students be more involved in the classroom and more involved in their education. I think how education's set up right now is just, it's so one-sided in so many ways. A lot of the times it's just the professor making material and we're just doing it, you know? And I think that that really goes along with how we're gonna be prepared, you know? I don't know why students haven't been given more empowerment in the classroom. It makes us like get involved in what we wanna do, and it makes us like make these essential decisions, you know, up front, right there. And there's just so many things in between open education and open pedagogy. I think the combination of those things are really neat. The school, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, has the slogan, learn by doing. And there's so many people that are attracted by this idea of learn by doing. And I don't get why we aren't doing that across the globe, you know?
Amen. You talked about preparation and relevance, of course. So Rachel, I'd love to ask you, what should the connection between education and the workforce look like?
It's a big question, Sam.
We're all friends here.
We are. I think it's complicated, right? And I think it really depends on the student and what they're looking for in their workplace. One of my concerns, both as a student and as an instructor for undergraduate classes, is I think there's an important connection between the classroom and your career, but I don't think it's the only driving factor for why people always do go to college, right? Thinking about what you learn in the classroom as a private good that will help you in your career, but also as a public good in terms of being civically engaged. Sometimes it's hard to measure that and see that while you're in the classroom, but it does have tangible rewards.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm actually going to kick this over to you, Jonah, because when we first met, you were in Hong Kong. You made a statement to me that you hadn't attended classes in a while, so I know that you have a very particular standpoint on, better connecting education.
Fair enough. I mean, can I go ahead and answer like what my hopes like?
Oh, by all means.
Okay.
You got the mic.
So I think that and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think that one of the really unfortunate realities that a lot of students face is that the professors and teachers that they maybe have access to are removed from many people removed from like the change makers and the people who are building tools that we use every day. And this is especially true in computer science. I think I'm a little bit biased towards computer science students, but it's unfortunate that, for example, universities don't encourage other pools of knowledge, because I feel like if universities introduce students to alternative pools of knowledge, then maybe like the students would choose those other knowledge pools over the university. And so I think that it's hard for universities to introduce their students to alternative forms of learning because the students, might potentially leave. And so I think that's unfortunate.
No, point well taken. Lou, let's kick this over to you about, better connecting education to the relevance of our society and workforce.
I think I have a lot of answers to that. One of the things two things I think is really important when we're connecting practice and academia is in part like learning the collaboration skills that we need in order to be successful in practice, and also the interdisciplinary nature. I know a lot of like the future's moving towards building especially educational technologies, and in a lot of cases, a lot of what our society is being moved towards is how do we collaborate across multiple disciplines. We know that this is really challenging and hard. So what are the actual skill sets that we need to be training students on in order to do this effectively and build innovative solutions and be successful at this? Because I think that's a really challenging thing that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, well said. And just picking up that thread of challenges, I know we talked about reframing a discussion of challenges to achieving the dream, but I think it's important for us to deeply understand student challenges so that we could empathize with them, because I truly think empathizing is what gets us to understand and solve challenges that maybe we personally aren't experiencing. So I want to ask some of the students, what are the biggest challenges you're facing in education right now? And Melanie, we'll start with you.
Hi, that's a great question. I think it really depends on where students are coming from. In the chat we had with Salesforce, we talked a little bit about how students come from different identities and different backgrounds, and those aren't always represented in the faculty that are teaching them, so they don't really have anyone to guide them or anyone to look up to and mentor them through these processes. So I think that just moving forward, I'd really like to see the institutions form and to reshape their structure of the diversity in faculty to reflect the actual student body that is learning from them, and then to also adapt to meet students' needs. So a lot of students don't come in with the necessary tools that they need, and faculty assume that students come into universities able to meet the coursework that they have. And I think that the university needs to adjust its model into not being such a standardized model that fits every student, but unique models that adapt towards students' needs.
Thank you. How about you, Jacob?
I would say that definitely one of the biggest struggles I face as a student is balancing the altruistic pursuit of knowledge, just learning for learning's sake, and knowledge for specifically the workplace. For example, at San Diego State, we have certificate programs for like in music for Pro Tools, and as soon as students heard about it, of course, they rushed to it because it's something they can put on their resume immediately. But the process of learning might not be as beneficial as just learning for learning's sake, and so balancing that is difficult.
Thank you. Ariel, what about you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is that class or courses teach us like the knowledge that we have, but once you go out in the workforce, you realize that you can't really apply, you don't really know how to apply the coursework to work. So you have to find other opportunities, which is like part-time jobs or volunteer experiences. And students who don't really get involved or who don't really have the courage to get started, they don't have that experience. So when they graduate, they just really can't get into the workforce as easily as those who have accumulated all that experience.
What I'm hearing is a lot of times the burden is placed on students to seek out those opportunities, but what can institutions and the individuals serving those institutions do to remove that burden and make sure those opportunities are plentiful and clear and students are invited in? How about you? What's your biggest challenge, do you think, Diana?
I think like one of the things that institutions could do better is helping to connect the dots really more. I think like this is more bouncing off of Ariel's idea that like we have like this set curriculum, and like the idea is that we're supposed to be able to connect all the dots for why we're going into certain experiences, why we're taking certain courses, why this is essential for where we're going to go, but there's never that direct connection in the classroom. And so when you don't have those opportunities outside of class to like have a part-time job or get an internship in something that's within your field, you're just expected to somehow understand that these are all like great concepts that you will someday apply, but we don't know how, we don't know why, and we don't see connections between those courses either. And so I think like for me, one of the things that I developed throughout high school that I was really happy about, it was a very unique curriculum, so I developed that ability to like help see some of those connections more so even if they weren't explicitly said. But I know that a lot of my peers struggle with that, and sometimes even I do, just to understand what is the actual real world value of the things that we're learning and how are we expected to apply these in a professional setting. Is it more for the content, or is it more for the metacognitive skills that we're getting out of it? So I think making those direct connections to the workforce would be really helpful.
Awesome, thank you. Lauren, what are you seeing as the biggest barriers to taking active steps to improve education?
Some of the biggest barriers, I would say, is kind of the structure of our curriculum itself. We have to go through, as students, at least 12 credits of some sort of core curriculum or general education, and then go through whatever our major requirement is in order to complete some sort of capstone project to graduate. And as students, we change our minds with what we want to do at least 5 times throughout our college experience. And for right now, I don't think with our curriculum that we have the room to really explore, because we're focusing on trying to, check off all these different credit markers that we need to complete. So having a little bit more agency over what we get to learn, the classes we get to take, instead of going through a strict curriculum list that was decided by some deans that's supposed to be a one-size-fit-all sort of approach, and just allowing us to have a little bit more agency to really design what we want to learn and how we want to shape our education would be a great way to improve.
If I may, what do you think about universities that kind of let students design their own course plan?
I think there's actually a lot of merit with that, as someone who did try to go through a major where I would design my entire course plan. As long as they're doing something that would be rigorous and has a good end goal, I can definitely see some merit to that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with it.
I agree.
Yeah, maybe in the year 2039 we'll start to see academic pathways that look more like unconferences, unpathways, that allow students to move between disciplines with a little bit more finesse. So I'd love to hear back from you, Roshni. What do you wish that educational... Oh, I'm sorry, Julia, please, we'd love to hear from you on some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, I think there's such a growing trend to have interdisciplinary undergraduate programs, but when it gets time to be applying for grad school and everything, you're kind of at this problem of not really being specialized enough for anything but an interdisciplinary master's program. So that's kind of like the conversations that I've been having at the University of British Columbia, because it's been so valuable to have such an interdisciplinary experience, but really not being able to move any further there.
Thanks you so much for sharing, Julia. Roshni, just to kick it back to you, what do you wish that educational leaders and faculty would keep in mind every day?
I think if educational faculty and leaders could keep in mind that students are here to learn, but they also have a lot of other things going on and a lot of priorities and ambitions. I think that's very key. A lot of students kind of just are at university to get their education, and that's what they're there for, and that's amazing. But a lot of students are not really in that same mindset. A lot of them are very interested in doing internships, jobs, volunteering, going abroad, having a full range of experiences, and getting involved on campus or elsewhere. And students do need to have a little bit more flexibility in their education and assignments and grading especially. So it would be nice to see if there's a way to sort of incorporate that flexibility a little bit more while still maintaining the rigor and prestige of whatever program or university it is.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And then I wanted to just say a small comment. Students like to talk as much as you do. People who lecture, we love to talk to. We have all these voices going on. You know, we are so static here. I think that every professor needs to remember that, like, it's great to be in front of a classroom. Like, you guys have all the power. It's fantastic. You love to teach, right? And we are just as excited as you are. Just, we don't have as many opportunities to be able to teach you guys or talk about this besides just with our peers. And so I'd really love to see if there's anybody, especially who's inspired after this or who wants to share it with their department. I mean, when you get students up to even teach one class of a quarter or a semester, it's way more interesting because you see a plethora of how people word things and how things are described and just different pictures, you know? And it's just a way better learning experience for us when we get to speak as well.
Yeah. In fact, that's an excellent segue and setup for one of our next questions, which is all about solutions and how we move forward together. So, Rachel, I'd love to ask you, how could students, faculty, and other education professionals work together to drive these changes in education?
I think they have to stop having such static pictures of each other as like siloed stakeholders in education. So I think that students kind of view faculty as sort of like the set entity, and then faculty also view students as like an amorphous group of students, right? You kind of touched on this, Rashni, but you know, a lot of students are balancing multiple roles, right? So they're going to school, some people are supporting themselves or their family and have competing obligations. At the same time, a lot of faculty, especially at not only research institutions, but at all different types of institutions, they have different roles and responsibilities too, right? They're not just teaching. So we're meeting in the classroom and seeing each other in that space, but we have lives outside of that space professionally and personally. I think if we interacted more and just understood that and respected that, we could have overall a better education perspective as students and as instructors.
Well said, thank you. Lou, I'd love to hear from you ideas on how we could better work together. Not just you and me, we work together just great. Faculty, staff, students.
Yeah, I guess building off your answer to like the siloed nature of academia, kind of, let's see, I think. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
No problem. Just how could we all work together to drive change? We could totally revisit that point later, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I think, kind of again building off of her idea, is how faculty are remembering what it's like to be a novice. You're not like having the expert. I know it kind of depends on faculty and how you're addressing these things, but remembering that students are coming at these from multiple perspectives and not always having the background in order to do things as we're expected. This goes for like undergraduate, especially through master's and PhD, like the level I am, working with different faculty who have different expectations and things like that, really being able to be open and flexible to how students are learning and what they need in order to be successful in their roles.
Please, keep going. Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Just to piggyback off of this, I think this goes to one of Diana's points about how learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. A lot of learning happens through research positions or mentorship by professors in undergraduates, and that can't really happen if undergraduates aren't given an opportunity to do research. And I think that this might just be something Berkeley or things that happen at other campuses, but there is a huge divide between the opportunities that undergraduate students have and the access that they have to faculty. And so moving that outside of the classroom and allowing students to engage with faculty in these research settings, I think would really shift the change and help students learn a bit more.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. Thank you so much for sharing. Over to you, Ariel.
I'm very user-focused, so I think that dialogue between staff, faculty, and students are very important. And this could be like interactions with the students and asking them, talking to them about what they want, what they need, but it could also be like feedback, like a simple feedback survey at the end about the learning process, about the curriculum would be very helpful for faculty and staff to redesign their curriculum so that the next course could be better for students.
And kind of related to that, I think like bringing the problems that your university faces to the students would be a really interesting problem to solve. Like there are no shortage of problems to be solved in the world, but even at a university level, on a program level, like I've personally gotten involved with leadership in programs that were staff led, but we ended up as a student group finding solutions to the problems that they were facing. And honestly, it was such an invigorating experience for me and for the group of students that were there, because we realized that the things that we were building were not just going to sit in a classroom and nobody was ever going to look at it again. As a computer science student, I make so many different projects that literally go nowhere because that is just what I've been assigned. But when I can create something that I know people will use and that I know people get value out of, that's incredibly motivating, and it's also a really interesting problem to solve in comparison to just assigning something. But one barrier that we've seen is trust on the staff side, because staff are concerned about sustainability, which is a completely reasonable concern. But I think like trusting the students to understand that we believe in sustainability, we believe in creating programs that have long-term value, and that makes it an even more interesting problem to solve together, rather than something that staff is concerned and that they want to hold on to because they're just not sure what kind of value we want to bring. But we want the best out of the programs. We want the best out of the schools. So I think giving a little bit more trust in these problems to give it to students would be really helpful too.
Thank you so much. You know, when I was entering the field of education, one of the first opportunities I got to hear student voice was actually a fourth grader. His class had just worked on a project to help a local community recover from a natural disaster. They donated books. They came up with all these creative ways to help out. And one of the students in the interview said, I realized we don't have to wait to graduate to change the world. And that has stuck with me. Yeah. That has stuck with me for a really long time, and I feel, Diana, that really resonates with your point about making the work relevant not only to students' lives, but to the society around them, and making it more connected. Natalie, over to you.
I wanted to add to that because I was pretty much a student employee for the distance learning department at my community college and ended up creating a whole program. So I want to remind everybody in this room that the power students have. So just like everybody's been saying here, I think what it means for you guys is essentially we're holding a giant workforce that just wants to learn and wants to do things like for the better of the community, right? So you guys got to remember that every single talent that each of these students have, they want to implement them. They want to get involved in something. If there's something that you're passionate about, like a project, they would be more than happy to be involved in and contribute their values. And I would love to see that more often. I think that more faculty in schools should be employing more students in some ways, or have them work under department like chairs and different things and work on different projects within the school or out of the school. And because I know that that's a big topic out here, is that we're working with different corporations, and like corporations sometimes coming in and doing projects. But I just don't understand why we aren't pretty much using this cheaper workforce that needs resume building, you know? It's true. And I mean, I don't think we have any shame in saying that we're cheaper, because I mean, if we have the opportunity to work on like legendary projects that could change the university, the country, the state, whatever you want to call it, I mean, why wouldn't we want to be a part of it, you know? And we get that work experience, we have references, and we get the mentorship. There's just so many things that come along with this.
Well said. I have just a couple questions to get through, then we're going to invite questions from you all. I'd like to go back over to you, Julia. I know you're super passionate about open education. Talk to us a little bit about the power of openness and your hopes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think open education is really powerful in community contexts. I work a lot with community outreach programs and teaching folks with lower incomes in poorer neighborhoods in Vancouver. And the power of being able to utilize these platforms and being able to carry them through not only in the traditional university contexts, but in, you know, smaller programs and certificates, and be able to really sort of bridge that gap is really empowering for people beyond the walls of the university.
Awesome. In the vein of promising developments, Jacob, what are some of the biggest, most exciting trends that you're noticing that are proving to be successful?
Well, I have noticed that in a lot of my classes that use the flipped classroom strategy, where initial learning is done at home privately, and then practice problems or applications are done in class, it's very successful because professors can provide individualized teaching to students. It kind of creates access to the professor from just the people who most commonly raise their hands or try to interact in the class, to every single person. When they need help, the professor is there. That's definitely a successful trend that I've noticed.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Let's talk a little bit about technology. You know, we have a number of technology professionals in the room. So Jonah, I'm going to go over to you. How will universities adapt as companies begin to realize that the internet is more effective educational tool than some of the practices that we're seeing today?
I think that it's hard. Well, there are a lot of sites out there that Udemy, Skillshare, Masterclass is an interesting one. They basically go and find like the best of the best in any given field, and then basically have them give a lecture on what they excel at. And sites like that give students a way to learn outside of school. But again, going back to the point that I made earlier, it's hard to, like, if you start encouraging those types of tools in a university setting, like I don't really see that happening too often, because universities want their students to participate in the university setting, not in other settings. That's just how it is.
All right. Well, that's. Oh yeah, please, Melanie. Love to hear.
Yeah, so I think that as education moves more outside of the classroom where you can utilize other tools, the university setting becomes more of like, what is the benefit of going to university if you can find out all the knowledge and develop all the skills that you need outside of the university via the internet or small classes. I think at that point, the university setting, like the benefit of a university is having that student-to-student cross collaboration. And so seeing the university utilizing that more and supporting students in those conversations and those projects, I think is where we're heading in education and the value of the university and the degree.
Thank you so much. Well, I have about 1,000 other questions, but I'm sure you do too. So Lev, the mic man, is going to be passing around the microphone if you have any questions to ask of our panelists. Natalie serving double duty. Awesome.
Thank you for this very interesting panel. And you all look very bright, very motivated, very intelligent. But what's up with those students who are not like you? The low achievers, the students who are hard to motivate. How can we help them? I think from my practice, this is the most difficult question.
Okay, there we go. I just gotta talk. I gotta eat the mic. Good tip. Eat the mic. Being a transfer student, you know, there's tons of people who can't afford education hardly, who barely get by these classes. I think that they definitely need to be heard, and I think that the first boundary that as institutions that we need to focus on is change our thinking and how we're setting up education. I don't think it's right that we're robbing students thousands and thousands of dollars. So I could say going to 3 years of community college versus going straight to university, I've saved over $60,000 easy. And I know that there's tons of students here who have student debt, and I know there's tons of students I know, and literally I've talked to students throughout my career who couldn't afford meals when they bought a textbook, who couldn't take more than 1 or 2 classes because of the cost of the classes, who had trouble and lived out of a car for multiple years. You know, and these people exist out there, and I know in a bigger university setting, we're very fortunate to have more people who can afford housing and do student payments. But we really need to consider the people who weren't given or aren't able to do these kinds of things. And I kind of laugh because there's a point where sometimes when I walk by homeless people, I think our students are more poor than these people because they have student debt that's going to last a lifetime, you know, and kind of a ridiculous statement, but it's true in many ways because I've talked to so many even teachers who are still in debt and they're past 30 years old.
Yeah, I want to echo the sentiments and also say that higher education isn't for everyone, and I think that there's a common misconception in our society that everyone needs to go to college, and I think that we should be shifting away from that. And also, when students get to university, like they are at university, they got into a university, so they are motivated, and they were motivated at one point. And I think it is on the backs of the institution and the professors to ensure that students continue to be motivated. I forgot what your name is, but you mentioned that students don't have the flexibility to shift around in their majors and to develop a curriculum that they are motivated and energized to study, when students are actually engaged in they are way more likely to higher achievers to their studies. And I think that is more about the university shaping the educational system so that students stay engaged, because everyone comes in motivated. And so if they're losing their motivation, that's something that's happening because of the university.
Okay, so next question is connecting the dots. What if we could make, just an idea, internship as part of the curriculum, and you don't have to pay tuition for that, and it's you get credit and you learn real life experience, so it's win-win for students, and of course, as Natalie mentioned, cheap labor for the companies as well as for universities. What if that is one baby step we take? I mean, there are multiple companies in the room here. What if we have a signature on dotted line from them that they will have 5 interns every semester from each university in their neighborhood area?
Yeah. Okay. That is definitely a very valuable experience to have, and that's why different universities like Northeastern University or Drexel, for that matter, who specialize in co-ops, are just very, I'm forgetting the word right now, but why it's so intriguing to students to go to a university like that. And even if a student, for example, will want to do a research track rather than an internship, that should definitely be something that us as students should have opportunities for. I know with the program that I'm currently in, because I'm in a communications pre-professional school, we mostly focus our time on internships, and one of the problems I've faced interested in trying to gear myself more towards doing research. And within the college that I'm a part of, within my university system, I didn't have the opportunity to really do that. So having that sort of work experience along with our studies would be fantastic. It's like my favorite class right now is, even though I'm a communication STEM major, is getting involved in the English department and learning how to throw an academic conference and being able to speak at that and make my own research and really be able to take shape in what I want to learn and what I want to do. So definitely more activities like that, more sort of project capstone courses would be great.
Still the microphone is close to me. So I actually, in my undergraduate degrees in graphic design, and part of that is you have to get internship to get experience. And I do think that the best learning experiences I had was tacking on my classes with industry experience, where I was actually getting to do things and learn things and actually work on projects that were meaningful and doing something. But at the same time, I think a lot of times, and at least in my experience and others that I know, not taking advantage of students in those examples. Because I know some universities have you pay for credits when you're doing the research internship so that it transfers and so it counts for your degree. I also know that at least in like the arts and design and things like that, you get unpaid internships. I mean, I know like engineering and the sciences, that's different because there are paid internships, but also looking at what are those internships and how are we facilitating that also? Because I think that the university can play a role in that, but we need to be critical of what are these positions we're giving to students and how are they finding those and how are they being supported as well, because I think that's a really important piece. But I think that's a valuable learning experience we need to focus on.
Required internships don't work. The students aren't motivated. They have to do the internship. Why would I hire an intern who has to do this internship when there are a bunch of interns lining up that are motivated, they actually want the internship, and they're not just doing it so that the credit transfers over to a university. Required internships don't work. They don't work.
To kind of be the contrarian to that, I do know mandatory co-op programs that have been successful. I am not in a mandatory co-op program, but I am in a co-op program. And from my understanding, you still have to sort of compete with other students for example, like more prestigious programs or whatever it is. So I think that the key to finding success in mandatory work and integrating work in learning is finding a variety of positions that cater to what the students' interests are, because one particular discipline or topic can be applied in so many different ways. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all when it comes to finding work experiences that match education. yeah, I'm such a huge proponent of integrating work with learning, and some of the most useful skills that I've learned and I know that I will actually apply in what I want to do come from things that I've taught myself from having to know those things because of my work experiences. So I think there's a definite balance there, and the key is figuring that out.
So I'm up next. Will you all raise your hand if you've ever accessed credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment? Not one of you. Do you know what those are?
Could you clarify what that is?
Yep. See, and that is a huge issue because you're talking about going out to Udemy and going out to Degreed and all of these different areas, even learning through YouTube or self-study, going and reading a book in the library. There are opportunities at many institutions, not all, because it's still not accepted at all universities, even though it's been around since the 70s, that will allow you to demonstrate that you have that knowledge, skill, or ability that applies to a course and get credit for it without having to sit through a course. So I think that, my question is, would that be appealing to you? And if you knew more about it, would you take advantage?
So from what I understand, is that just like challenging a course pretty much?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
In some places it can be like a challenge exam.
Okay.
In some places you craft a portfolio that shows you've met the learning outcomes of the course. In some places there are direct credit equivalencies, right? Like if you have a CISSP, speaking to our tech guy, we'll give you 36 credits for it. So, but you may not know that if it's not communicated well from your institution.
Well, and being a transfer student, I noticed right away that they're actually trying to take away more of the credits that you actually do. Like, for instance, I took 2 or 3 classes at my community college, and they specifically said, even though the curriculum is practically the same, they said you have to test for this course to even get the credit. And I thought that was ridiculous. I spent the money. I took the course. And I didn't end up challenging it because I was like, I'm transferring to the school. I should get more integrated in the program. But I think schools specifically hide that because the mentality of the business side of the school is just so strong. And I think that I would like to see institutions curve, but I know academia, like the lecturers and professors are totally different from the business people, and that's not going to ever change, I don't think, soon. It would be amazing if it did.
Mayor Haynes?
So I have a question for you guys. How many times in your academic career has a professor stopped the class and asked you to reflect on what you're doing? What you're learning, what are you doing in terms of your learning journey? How does the class fit into that? Do they ask your input? Just curious.
Yeah, I have changed my major 6 times over the course of my 4-year degree, and I find that I've been getting a lot more of those questions in more humanities courses than any of the other that I've been in. So in First Nations Indigenous Studies, it's a very small community feel, about 10 students per classroom, and the teachers are very, very engaged in the students' learning. We have very collaborative approaches to it. We'll do Google Docs every class where we'll throw up our ideas together and really be engaged in what we want the outcomes to be. But that's not something I've ever encountered in any sort of larger discipline. So I think that that's something to really look for.
We have another question, but I know Lauren had something.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I know with a couple of my classes, I've been very, very lucky with some of my professors where they would hand out flashcards in like our mid-semester point, asking, are we going too fast? Are we accomplishing what you want to learn? What can we do better? And sometimes I could see the change coming from that, from after that. Sometimes I don't, but I was in a class that was very much a lot of self-study, and you kind of create what you want to do, and that I saw was very overwhelming for some of the students. So when people are asking for a little bit more structure and everything, you would see some of the feedback, and that's something I would love to see from professors a little bit more, is just getting that feedback from students, since we are the focus of education.
Yeah, so thank you. This is very, very inspiring for all of us. And so many of us here, I work for an organization that is focused on education, many of us universities, companies, and all of that. We have our own definition of personalized learning. But what I'm curious to hear is your definition of personalized learning, and what does that mean to you as students? Thank you.
I'm an administrator on a video game development club. Okay, eat the mic. I'm an administrator on a video game development club, and that we're really trying to provide something insightful to students because we're not experts, the administrators of the club. But really, it's difficult to define personalized learning for each person unless you have one-on-one attention with every single person. And in a classroom environment, that's not always an option. I would say that to have successful personalized learning, it really needs to start incorporating all of the elements that students are doing regardless. Looking up YouTube tutorials or researching things online, stuff like that. It needs to not just be a personalized learning situation in traditional classroom standards.
Yeah, I have two questions for you. One is, I believe all of you identified as either seniors or in graduate school. So that means you're either at the threshold of completing your undergraduate experience or you've completed that and you've moved on. How many of you, just show of hands, feel that your undergraduate experience is what you came in, it fulfilled your expectations, and it prepared you for the next stages of your life? Good.
But I would caution and say that it wasn't because of just my academics, and it was more the organizations and the community that I developed with students.
Yeah. My second question is, clearly all of you are very engaged and have applied critical thinking to higher education and to ways that we can improve that. Is it simply random sample, or is there something deeper that only 2 among you are males and the rest are all women? Is there any gender differences you see?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can kind of just speak from my experience, but the majority of leadership positions that I've seen within sometimes the student government, but within like club executives and things like that, just people pursuing kind of more like leadership positions of power, that sort of thing, tend to be women a lot of the time. And I think personally that's because women need to prove themselves more than men do. And of course, I'm completely speaking from bias here because I'm a woman, but I think that women need to prove themselves not only to their future employers, community, whatever it is, but also to themselves to show that they do have the skills and not only just like the knowledge within their head and their, the know-how, but also being able to apply it. So I guess there is maybe, I don't think this is biased necessarily in terms of makeup within like university student governance or things like that, but that's just been my experience so far.
Well, and to add to that, we have a bunch of students here that are guys that are not speaking on the panel as well. I think that girls like to talk, right? We like to talk. We have more to say. I think we're also just probably more observant. Just knowing the basic female, I think we're a little more mature. We see things in a different view. That doesn't mean that guys don't. I know. They're grimacing me. I think that and everybody has a different point of view. I think the majority of the time, than girls, maybe we just look at things differently. That's all I could say about that.
Hey, Sam, do we have time for one more?
Hi, I'm curious from this panel, how many of you would, if costs were lower, online learning completely, hybrid learning, and when would you actually come to campus if you were to go through online learning?
So one problem that I find with online learning is you have to be very self-motivated, or else you'll just cram everything at the last second before your final exam. Yeah, so I think online learning is great, but it's only helpful for students who are motivated. So hybrid might work because there's both the online component and especially for students who are traveling for a long time or commuting to school and it takes them a while, it could be a lot more difficult for in-person learning, but there's many advantages of in-person learning. And I think it's important to kind of shape your in-person learning experiences to have things that online learning won't provide.
Online learning only works if you're learning for learning's sake. If you're learning for other people, it doesn't work. Because it's not credentialed.
I will say that online learning is more vulnerable because if implemented incorrectly, the technology is there and it's decent, but if you're just using your online learning as a method of communicating multiple choice tests, students are going to cheat they're going to try to do everything they can to remove time from things that they're not passionate about, which might be multiple choice questions, and adapt that time into something they are passionate about, whatever, if they just want to watch sports or something, or pursue learning in a different direction.
I just want to add on to that one quick point. Of course, some students are lazy, but a lot of students aren't lazy. And I think that a lot of times instructors and professors think that students are lazy. That's not necessarily true. We are just rational, and we want to spend our time doing things that we want to do.
One more response, and we have one final question. Rick, sorry, two responses. Rachel and Lauren.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think online learning does have a lot of potential, and I've taken good online classes as a student and bad online classes as a student, and I've taught what I think are okay online classes and like not so great online classes. And I think it really depends on the student, and it can leverage students' voices who don't feel comfortable participating in an in-class context. And so personally, as someone who's kind of shy, I like that, and I've seen other students like it too. So I think it does have, it has its pros for sure.
I can definitely see online learning as, yeah, sorry about that. I can definitely see online learning as a good supplement to in-class learning, especially with the flipped classroom method, with what you mentioned earlier, Jacob. But one of the values with being in a class and being in a university setting is, for one, access to equipment that you probably wouldn't be able to get at home, and two, having access to that campus community. Because one of the things that they promote a lot on college campuses is that your peers are going to become your network, and you're going to be working with that network for the rest of your life and taking advantage of that. And just being able to have that sort of community, being able to just have a face-to-face conversation with a professor has been huge, at least for my education, or at least with other students. It's how I've been able to learn more about what I would want to do and gain to know a bunch of different people. There's a lot of value within that. So definitely online learning as a supplement may be a way to get ahead in your classes if you can't fit everything into a 4-year program. But I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done before I'd say it's a real substitute to going to a natural classroom and interacting with your peers and your professor.
Thank you. Last final question, just to keep things on time. Michael, over to you.
So first of all, thank you all for taking time out of your schedules. You mentioned sort of things that you do outside of your academic careers to spend some time with us for this day and really this morning. I want to follow up on the workforce, students as a workforce conversation. So a couple observations. One is from all of our institutions, right, we see our students graduating and going to work for the best technology companies, and yet for some reason we're not able to figure out ways to hire you to come and solve some of the same challenges that we have to solve in private industry. Two is that what I've observed about students is you all are pretty fearless when it comes to technology, something that we can't always say about our professional colleagues, staff. But I'm curious about programs in which, how would you all feel about a university that essentially, pays for your education and then you basically sign on to work for that institution for a few years afterwards, similarly to sort of military model. I've been thinking about ways to infuse, right, the energy from our students into the IT workforce, and I'd be curious to hear some of your perspectives on that.
That's kind of what a professor is, right? Pretty much, we already have that, and it's called a professor that just has never done anything other than academia. That's what you just described. And I don't like learning from professors who have only ever done academia, so I'm going to give that one a big no.
From my point of view, I've thought about your model before, and I know that it's been pretty successful. I think of it more of a trade school model, and I could see that it would be more successful than some people going to college. I mean, I don't understand why people, like I said, going into debt, and some people changing majors or not even graduating. I don't think it's worth it. And I think if they were guaranteed a job, they got to understand exactly what their job's about, and they really specialized in it, I could see it being pretty successful.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I also think it would be successful. That's kind of an extended pre-doctoral RA position that some students get with professors. That also, I know a lot of students who are senators or vice presidents in our student government who have been developing really strong relationships with admin and people that work in path to care at our campus and really want to pursue positions in those offices after they graduate. And so I don't think it's out there idea. It's probably not for every student, but there are a lot of students that would be interested in it.
On the contrary, I think it fundamentally changes the mission of the university to a place to explore and to discover what you want to do if you're already sort of going into it with the sort of contract that this is what you're going to be doing at the end. So I think it sort of takes away that creativity and the vulnerability to explore what you really want to learn and what are passionate about. So I would caution against that.
I will say anything that can reduce the cost of tuition and entry is going to be popular with at least some students. So there is validity there, and student loans are near predatory these days. If I could take essentially internship at a college in order to pay for my tuition, I absolutely would.
I would say I agree. I think that there's people who would have value. I would have done it if I could have not had my massive student loans I have now. But my thing is my question and issue with it is who's getting those opportunities. Because as someone who went to a rural school, who didn't have access to a lot of things that I know other people do, I question if even myself would have had the opportunity to get one of those positions because I didn't necessarily have the courses or the resources to be applicable for those kinds of positions. But
I think free tuition sounds really great, but now that I think about it, at the start of my university journey, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I actually changed my major 3 times in the course of my university degree. So it feels like if I enter knowing that I'm going to get a job at this company and get my tuition paid for, I feel like I'm selling my life away. And if I change my mind, then what do I do? So that might be something that you might want to consider before moving forward with that. Oh, a year is a long time though. If it was I don't know, a co-op term for a couple of months, that might be okay. But if it was for a year or more, I don't know, I just feel really trapped.
As a suggestion, I would have you ever heard of the rotating model strategy where they try different positions? You have one individual rotate. I think that could almost be a good substitute because you have a mixture of people being able to try something, kind of having a preference, but also having a specialized area.
Yeah, jumping on that, there's technology development programs at companies that are specifically rotational, and so that could be an interesting way to help people keep that exploratory aspect to it. But as somebody who's a computer science student who got interested in some of the more administrative higher ed problems to solve, I think one of the reasons why people don't necessarily see higher ed as a place to have interesting IT challenges is that they've never seen it. The only reason I was able to see some of that was because I was on a leadership position in a program where I got to work really closely with staff. And I saw problems that they did not see as problems. And so, me being there and, being present and helping to see those problems, number one, allowed me to see that, that interesting aspect to it. But then also, nobody else would have surfaced those concerns otherwise.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all the students today for sharing their hopes and dreams and thoughts with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And clearly there's no shortage of energy and questions for you. So I encourage everyone, if you didn't get to ask a question or even a burning question later, let's keep these conversations going. I think we're going to be here all day. And one just thing I want to say, just building on your point, Diana, is there's whole worlds that exist out there. But oftentimes we don't even know that they exist unless we're invited into them. So again, I'm going to go back to my earlier point about reducing the friction and reducing the burden and making it really, really easy for students, no matter what walk of life they are, whether it's online, face-to-face, whatever we're calling it, that they know that those opportunities that that exist and they're able to easily secure them. So thank you so much. We're going to take just, instead of a 10-minute humanity break, as the schedule says, we're going to take just a 5-minute one. I hope that's okay. Then after we come back, we are going to start setting the tone for the year 2030. 5-minute break. Thank you so much.